UFC 27 The Ultimate Bad Boys took place on September 22nd, 2000 at the Lakefront Arena in New Orleans, Louisiana. Back to Louisiana for the fourth time, a staple of the Dark Ages, and this is the final event to not be held under the unified rules of MMA. The Pioneer era comes to an end tonight. UFC called time of death at November 17th, 2000 for their Pioneer wing of the Hall of Fame. So that's where we'll call it as well. And by UFC 28 at the end of November, we will have a semblance of the unified rules of MMA in place. So SEG will hold its final American event before we then close UFC 29 in Japan. Every event there has been an unmitigated disaster, so why not one more for the road, before we then sail up to Zuffa and head into UFC 30. So that's what's on the horizon. So the end is nigh, and I for one am embracing it. I am sick to death of SEG, the rug pull promotion, a lot of the matchmaking, the influx of boring fighters, the lack of star power, and now compound that with the length of the events increasing whilst the quality of the product goes down. Here's everything's worse. Take more of it, I can go on, but I won't. Not to say that there isn't the odd gem here and there. I love Frank Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz, two guys who have helped make this sort of running through the Dark Ages bearable. But recently there's not really been that much to get excited over, and you can pick out individual moments in fighters here and there that aren't bad, but the events as a whole leave a lot to be desired. But let's get going. We can mourn or celebrate at the end, but let's kick off now with the intro to the show. We see some of the top names on the card, and when I say the stars are gone, I mean it, folks. We highlight Eugene Jackson, Jeremy Horn, Maurice Smith, okay, Pedro Rizzo, okay, and Dan Severn, what? And then, you supplement that with some of the same stock footage we've been seeing since UFC 16 Battle in the Bayou. But it's time to get real, Cajun style, according to Mike Goldberg. So we go from the video package straight into something. I have no idea what they cut at the start of this event. This event at the time, never seen a home video release. When it first came out, it dropped later as part of a collection with some of these other recent events when Zuffa took over. So I don't know if this is what the actual pay-per-view aired like at the time. I don't know what the pay-per-view audience saw, but this is what's on Fight Pass, so this is how I'm going to review it. We don't go to commentary like we normally do to run down the card. We hear the voice of James Wermey talking over the rules and regulations immediately coming out of the video package. Wermey then lets us know there is no title bout tonight. Now you would be confused by that as the paying customer, seeing as this event is named Ultimate Bad Boys, of course, named after the current UFC middleweight champion, the Huntington Beach bad boy, Tito Ortiz, who you'll remember at UFC 26 was promoted as being at this event and promoted as being in the octagon fighting at this event. Now, I done some research and was able to find this gem, published on September 22nd, 2000, day of the show, by the way. And I'm putting the screenshots here. This is from Full Contact Fighter, and we will be looking at it here together. I will read aloud for the classroom. So, the title is Tito Ortiz, middleweight champion, withdraws from UFC 27. September 20th, 2 days prior to this event, by the way, that date. September 20th, 2000, New York City. Due to a change in Tito's management, UFC middleweight champion Tito Ortiz and SEG Sports were not able to reach an agreement for him to compete in UFC 27, set for September 22nd in New Orleans, Louisiana. However, the management company, Dana White Enterprises and SEG Sports, are happy to announce a new long-term contract between Tito Ortiz and SEG Sports that will include Tito as a commentator at both the event in New Orleans and the November 17th event in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Tito will defend his middleweight championship in Tokyo, Japan on December 16th. Statement from Dana White, President, Dana White Enterprises, sports management company. On behalf of Tito Ortiz, Dana White Enterprises would like to apologise to his fans who expected Tito to participate in the September 22nd event. Putting together a long-term contract that both parties support can be difficult. We're excited about the future of UFC and their efforts to enhance the sport of mixed martial arts. Finally, we would like to thank SCG Sports for their professionalism and determination to finalise a long-term agreement for their middleweight champion, Tito Ortiz. Statement from Bob Meyrowitz, CEO of SCG Sports. Tito Ortiz is the kind of champion the UFC has always prided itself on. A great athlete, a terrific person, and somebody with real star quality. We are very proud to continue our relationship with Tito and welcome Dana White into the mixed martial arts family. So there you have it. New long-term contract for Dana White's fighter to a company that he will soon partly own. Tito Ortiz, not on the card he was promoted for, and this, by the way, divulged to everyone a couple of days before the event. And you welcome Dana White into the MMA family? You sure do. So there you go. Paying customers, I hope you are avid readers of Full Contact Fighter. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what's happening. So there you go. So let's get to the action. Let's get to the arena. Werme says, back to you, Goldie. So they cut something at the start, 100%, because Werme was the first voice that we heard, so how can we go back to anything? The lights are down in the arena, so you also know that it's empty. This was a staple of those Japanese events. You can actually hear the echo in the arena as the narration comes through the PA for the video package for the first fight. When the spotlights are moving around the arena, you can also see the empty seats. Again, it just looks like a Ultimate Japan show. And that's not a good thing. You don't want to look like one of those Ultimate Japan events. So, what else is great is that Mike Goldberg's on commentary, which is fine, it's whatever, but Jeff Blatnick is gone. We don't know why yet, okay? But they don't introduce the new commentator. Mike just says the name Frank. So we presume it's Shamrock. We will soon be vindicated. But this was probably all in the prelude before we got to Werme with the rules and regulations, but they cut it all. So our first fight, we've finally gotten to it, 7.5 minutes in. It features Ian Freeman, and you click on Ian Freeman's Wikipedia page. I do this before I give people any praise to make sure that they're not a deviant. I learned my lesson after Joe-san, and I suppose Travis Fulton. But it doesn't take you to Ian Freeman the fighter. It takes you to some crypto scammer, part of the Crypto 6, who got 96 months in federal fucking prison, 2 years supervised release, and a 40k fine. And then 6 months after his sentencing, the judge ordered him to pay $3.5 million in restitution to 29 fraud victims. What the fuck? So it's fucking Freeman, apparently, and by name association. We want Ted Williams to beat this guy. And funnily enough, Ted Williams beat Travis Fulton previously, who was another alleged deviant. He was found friendly fired in a jail cell before any legal action could go further. So fuck Travis Fulton for legitimate reasons. Fuck Ian Freeman, even though we know it's a different guy. And Ted Williams seems normal. And, I mean, fuck, Jesus Christ, let's just get to the fights. Big John is the referee, let's get it on. Williams tries to take down Freeman after a slight struggle, but he gets the takedown easy enough into side control, then north-south, then back to side control, all against the fence. He lands him into intermittent ground and pound. Williams in the black, Freeman in the blue, by the way. Williams controls the fight, still on top. Frank Shamrock with his first Roganism, saying that Freeman has got to get out of there. And I was waiting for Frank to start talking about how, you know, he's in Williams' world now. But that was the whole round. Straight up side control, sporadic ground and pound, 10-9 for Williams, very boring. Into the second, Williams gets another, you could say, takedown. He just sort of pushed him over. But Freeman, this time, able to make it back to the feet. Still pushed up against the fence, though. Williams not letting go of the single leg for a while, but then he opts for a body lock. But Finally, Freeman is able to push Williams off the fence, who now looks gassed after the break. He opts for a very slow, very lethargic ankle pick, which is the universal sign for I'm fucked. Just a straight desperation takedown. Freeman stuffs easily into a sprawl. He transitions to backside, then moves into the guard of Ted Williams, and he starts throwing some heat from the top. I think he could tell that Williams was tired, and he's now landing a lot before Williams starts trying to hold on for dear life and opting for a closed guard and then just some head movement. His holding wasn't very effective. Williams almost able to escape, but we roll over and move into the guard again, and Freeman is able to throw some more ground and pound. And in an attempt to escape the bottom, we end up with Freeman in backside, landing knees to the head of Williams, which I could have swore were illegal, but the referee does nothing, and commentary actually gives him praise for it, so apparently not. I could have swore that was in the list of illegal moves that we were all told those events ago. But at UFC 26, we were told that Iowa didn't allow fighters with shoes to kick opponents, so maybe it's like a state-by-state rule. Not sure. But we start round 3. Freeman obviously got that round back last time, but Williams starts by striking. Again, he's still gassed, so he looks about ready to keel over. He tries for the takedown, which is stuffed, and we make it back to the feet, and then Freeman puts his hands on his knees, so we have two big guys that are gassed, both trying to hang on for dear life. Again, 1-1 at this point, so in the decisive round, nobody has any energy left. Williams goes for a double leg, ends up just, Freeman back against the fence, and then Williams transitioning to a single, back to a double, and then a double ankle pick whilst holding on to the fence the entire time. Referee does nothing about it, of course. He then just lays face down on the floor, Williams on top, and lands some knees. And then a hellacious right hand in the guard, which sounded just brutal. But now it's Freeman laying on top of Williams. He lands another big left, just hammer maxing. Mark Coleman style, lay on top, throw one big strike whilst gassed, recover, then throw another one big strike. All whilst the corner is saying, come on now, this is the Freeman show. I've never been more embarrassed watching a fight in my life. You're crushing this from the corner whilst Freeman is laying on top, holding on to the opponent on bottom in the guard, is just a sound and sight to behold. Literally bear hugging the guy on bottom in the corner is screaming, you're crushing this. We get some more intermittent ground and pound, and that ends the round. Freeman takes the fight, unanimous decision, 2-1, clearly, no issues with the decision. But when you're watching two guys who are just puffed out after one round, and this is what they call the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts, that is not ideal. We then move into some promo for Dan the Beast Severn, the most decorated champion in UFC history. Of course, the UFC 5 champion, Ultimate 95 champion, and the Super Fight champion. 3.5 years since we last seen him in the octagon, and it looks like he got younger somehow. He's 42 here, which is just insane. He plays interview bingo, nothing major. We then have some promo for UFC 28, due to take place at the Trump Taj Mahal Casino Resort. Quote, beautiful and luxurious, according to Mike Goldberg. If anyone has been there, can you let me know? It's in Atlantic City. And they advertised Kevin Randleman to face Randy Couture for the heavyweight title, the lineal heavyweight champion Randy Couture, to take on the current heavyweight champion, Kevin Randleman. So we finally get to find out who the real champion is. UFC kind of needs this, to be honest. And I know Bash Rutten retired in there, and he also vacated the heavyweight title belt, but that was after Couture had already done it. So really it's been a fake belt all along since Randy Couture left. Next up, Yuki Kondo versus Alejandro Dantas in a middleweight fight. Dantas comes out in the gi, never a good sign. Vitor might be the only exception to guys coming out in the gi, at least to this point in time. I know people that have followed, but to this point in time, as of UFC 27, Vitor Belfort is probably the only exception to a guy that comes out in gi and actually delivers. But Dantas comes out, and his opponent is Yuki Kondo, the number 1 ranked Pancrase fighter, and they say he has wins over Pete Williams and Frank Shamrock, which pretty good, not gonna lie. So getting him here is a pretty good deal. Why have we not seen him in Japan, though, for those Ultimate Japan events, if he is that good? Goldberg says that the winner of this fight could be looking at the next title shot against Tito Ortiz. This is Dantas' first MMA fight, by the way. Seriously. But he could be looking at Tito Ortiz next. He could be looking at the UFC middleweight champion in his second ever MMA fight. So to start off, they trade hands and clinch. In the centre, Dantas with the over-unders in the dominant position. He goes for the trip and Kondo reverses, gets on top. Dantas sweeps, gets on top instead, into side control. Dantas is a pretty good grappler. Dantas gets to full mount whilst holding onto Kondo's head. Dantas starts to throw some intermittent ground and pound, channel favourite. And Kondo almost turning his back in the mount, which would spell the end against Dantas, but he lays back and accepts full mount for a minute. Dantas then begins to strike. Kondo turns. Dantas can't get... Well, Kondo does then turn his back, right, which I hate, but Dantas can't get a hold of the choke, and Kondo's able to escape the mount and then get on top in the guard, which is still pretty dangerous against Dantas considering his credentials. Kondo now threatening the Sakuraba double hand strike, but he's opting for more traditional ground and pound. He only really finds success with the left hands because that's all he's throwing, but he's doing it well, I suppose. We then get back to the feet with seconds left in the first. Kondo throws some kicks before Dantas tries to grapple whilst clenched against the fence. Kondo lands a brutal knee on Dantas, which makes a disgusting sound to end the round. So really good first from both. I think Dantas probably got the better of Kondo. The flurry of ground and pound was probably enough to win over the judges, but that knee at the end was big for Kondo. It sort of puts the round into a precarious position. Which way will it fall? I would still give it to Dantas. But into the second, Kondo throws a kick. Dantas, of course, grapples immediately and gets a takedown into side control again, and then into mount again. Dantas threatens the arm lock before trying to strike. Kondo is able to reverse the position. Dantas tries to use the reversal to then pursue an armbar, but he can't get it. Kondo is now on top in the guard, and he lands a nice right hand, but then we stand back up. Again, Kondo doesn't really want to spend a lot of time on the ground, but Dantas really does not look confident on the feet against Kondo, so he attempts the takedown, which he gets again. Nice double leg into the guard, but Dantas is starting to look a little bit more tired as the round ends. He is on top. I think he takes this one too. I would honestly say Dantas is up 2-0. I could maybe see 1-1, but Dantas had more control over the round, even though Kondo finished strong. Again, he landed a couple of good ground and pound strikes, but Dantas threatening the submission attempt. Takedowns at will, really. Whenever he wants them, he can get them. I could see 1-1, but I'd go 2-0 Dantas. Kondo gets a good front kick to the body before Dantas clinches. Kondo's able to now trade dominant position against the fence, but Dantas, again, starting to get tired. And out of nowhere, Jesus Christ, what a right hook. Down goes Dantas, who slumps to the floor. He's barely holding on, but he's able to get Kondo in the guard. And I mean, holy shit, the sound of the right hand was disgusting. Kondo lands on top. Decent defense from Dantas, though, to be able to keep the fight alive. Kondo then stands back up. Again, he doesn't really want any of the guard with Dantas. He stands back up and lands another right hook, which almost drops Dantas. It looks bad, but Dantas was going for the takedown, so it looked just as bad as the first one, really, but it wasn't. He was going for the takedown. He was on the way down anyway. It doesn't look good, though, in terms of like how a judge would score it. But we then stand back up. Kondo lands a knee as Dantas is shooting in. Perfectly timed. That is it. Just brutal knockout. That's the fight. That is the knockout. Jesus Christ, what a knockout. Kind of pulls it out the fire, to be honest. I think he was down 2-0, but this was a really good fight for both guys, to be honest. Dantas done great, particularly for his first MMA fight. And he done really well in that first round. He had a little less control in the second as he got more tired. Kondo started to grow into the fight. By round 3, Kondo had all the momentum and it was just rolling downhill You could see what way it was going. It was just going to be if Dantas could hold on to get to the decision. In the end, he couldn't. Great knockout, great win. Kondo will fight Tito Ortiz at UFC 29 in Japan. But, I mean, how easy Dantas was able to get the takedown on Kondo, given how easy Tito took down Vanderlei, I think I can guess the outcome of this fight before it actually happens. But for what this was, fight the night, in my opinion, this was pretty good. Mike Goldberg then tells the audience Yuki Kondo will fight again in UFC, and you can fight in UFC. And I swear to God, I thought he was about to let us know about some sort of scheme you could sign up for. Here's some training you can sign for, and we'll get you here in the UFC to stat pad someone else's record. But no, of course not. It was just to promote the new UFC game, described as ultra realistic, which I love. And they have Tito Ortiz's celebration in here, which I also love. We're joined by Tito Ortiz. He's with James Werme in the back, originally scheduled to headline this event. We've been over this already. But he will headline in Japan at UFC 29. And then we get the story of Tito Ortiz's honeymoon. He and his wife on a moped. Tito gets confused about which way to look because he was in Europe, I presume. He said you have to look right to left instead of left to right. So it's really different. They get hit by a bus. No, I'm not kidding. First day of the honeymoon, Tito Ortiz and his wife got hit by a bus because Tito didn't know what way to look. For fuck's sake. Next up, can't grieve forever. Next up, we have Laverne Clark versus Fabiano Iha in a rematch from UFC 20, the fight nobody asked for. And that fight was controversial, of course, because Mario Yamasaki's first UFC fight, if I remember that one correctly. Laverne Clark cut Iha, and the fight was stopped by Yamasaki for the cut just before Iha was about to submit Clark. Does that sound like a mess to you? Because it was. You can watch the UFC 20 review to find out more. Since then, we have seen Iha lose to Frank Trigg in Pride and lose to Dave Mene at UFC 24. He has a win at the King of the Cage, but we are not concerned with that. We're just watching UFC in Pride. So UFC made Yamasaki the referee for this fight again. He fucked up the first one, so we'll give him the second one. Why not? Iha lands a low kick on Laverne, who returns with the right hand. Iha then swings and misses another low kick, whilst Laverne punches like he's unqualified to hold pads, never mind be an actual boxer. I have no idea what he was swinging for, but it missed, clearly, because he loaded all the way up, telegraphed that it was coming, and swung wildly and missed. Iha then takes down Clark, and Iha almost gets the armbar. Laverne tries to slam Iha, but it doesn't work. Iha holds on to Laverne, who tries to escape, but the hold is locked in and the referee stops the fight. So that Clark is still able to use his arm tomorrow. When you see the replay of this, it looks as though Clark verbally taps to the armbar and Yamasaki steps in. So this was a good win for Iha. And we've seen him fight 3 times before this. But after the 4th attempt, he finally gets a win. So good for him. We then see Pedro Rizzo in the back, and James Werme says this, and this is a direct quote: Pedro is beating the shit out of some bags over here. How professional. He's hitting pads with Marco Huas in the back, and James Werme describes that as beating the shit out of some bags over here. Good stuff. We then move on to Jeremy Horn versus Eugene Jackson. We haven't seen Horn in what feels like a while. He came in and lost a couple fights to Frank Shamrock and Ebenezer Braga, pretty good opponents, before then getting things back on track as he jumped up in weight. He has a win over Chuck Liddell. Before Chuck Liddell was Chuck Liddell, Chuck would eventually get it back. But Jackson won a couple of fights against Royce Agler. I believe that was in Agler's hometown, that's why he was booked on the card. But he got another win at Ultimate Japan 2 before he then lost at Ultimate Japan 3, where he got subbed. So Yamasaki is back for this one, and Horn starts on the front foot, taking the centre, landing a low kick before grabbing the body lock and getting the takedown into half guard, and we stay here for a while, of course. Miletich is Jeremy Horn's coach. Thought I'd just throw that in here. Completely unrelated to anything. Just thought I'd let everyone know, seeing as nothing is happening in the fight right now, I just thought I would throw it out there that Pat Miletich is in the corner for Jeremy Horn, who has now been able to transition to mount and to side control. He puts the knee on Jackson's belly, locks in the armbar and takes the fight as Jackson taps out. Nice win for Jeremy Horn here. He was able to outclass Jackson on the ground. Again, Jackson's last loss was getting subbed, so Horn was only going to do one thing here. Like, Eugene Jackson's part-time. Jeremy Horn is full-time. Eugene Jackson gets subbed in his last loss. Jeremy Horn feels that he's better on the ground than he is standing up. This was only going to go one way. Horn, the full-time fighter, Jackson, the part-time fighter. It showed here. Fine win for Jeremy Horn, because at least Eugene Jackson has some knockout wins. And I suppose Jeremy Horn, between moving up and down weight classes from middleweight to heavyweight, his last fight was at heavyweight, I think, and he's moved back down to middleweight here. It was a fine submission. It was a decent win. Nothing more, nothing less. This wasn't a great fight. It didn't last that long. Nothing to write home about. Nothing really to throw in the bin either. Complete middle of the road. But John Peretti is now on commentary to talk about matchmaking, because the matchmaker needs to force himself onto television whenever he can. You know, except when the main event of your pay-per-view goes to pot just before it's about to happen. The matchmaker can't come out and say anything about that. And I think at the last event he had some sort of family emergency, so I won't really, besmirch the name for that. But he's here now on commentary talking about matchmaking. He talks about the Kondo fight, and here is where Goldberg lets us know that Blatnick is away for the Olympics. He's doing some broadcasting for that. He is, of course, competed at the Olympics. Sure, he was a gold medalist as well. So he'll be back next time. This is not the permanent exit for Jeff Blatnick, even though that is coming up soon, at least from the commentary desk. We then see Mark Coleman in the back, and Werme says that what will it take for the Hammer to come back? And he says an opponent. And it's literally what I've said in previous videos. This guy lost a few times and get banished to the nether realm. Even though he beat Hizzo in that fight, they just handed it to Hizzo. So they don't book Coleman anymore. Even though he goes over to Pride, wins the Grand Prix, hands Igor Vovchanchyn what his third loss, and wins the tournament there. Sorry, buddy, we ain't got anything for you. Igor Vovchanchyn's lost 3 times. Once was to an armbar, all the way back in Russia or something like that. His other loss was via submission because a guy put his chin into Igor's eye and he was forced to tap. And the other one was Mark Coleman. But you can't get booked here, buddy. We ain't got any opponents for you. Remember, you get knocked out by Pete Williams that one time? So Peretti's back. Matchmaker. And he says that UFC 28 is shaping up nicely, so we'll just need to wait and see what comes from that when it comes. Bobby Hoffman is making his UFC debut up next. He's taking on Maurice Smith. Bobby Hoffman has fought in Rings before, which is one of the sort of bigger promotions outside of the top 2, UFC and Pride. We then run through Mo Smith's career, which started off amazing. He beat, at least his UFC career. Remember, when he got that heavyweight title fight, he had a negative record. But his UFC career started off amazing. He beat Mark Coleman. He then beat Tank Abbott in what I believe was a mess. I think that was it. Was that UFC 15 where it was supposed to be Dan Severn? Vitor had already beat Tank. They put Vitor in there with Couture and put Tank in the main event for some reason. Just an absolute mess. I believe that was the title of the video. UFC 15, you can go back and watch it. But he beat Tank Abbott on a few days' notice, of course. He then loses to Randy Couture. He then takes the year off to coach. He then comes back, loses to Randleman, and then got a gimme fight against an injured Marco Huas. So we don't really know what we're going to get from Mo Smith here. Bobby Hoffman comes running out to the cage. Peretti says this guy's full of piss and vinegar. And immediately I want Frank Shamrock back. And we'll get him back. Because not only is he in the corner of Maurice Smith, okay, he's still mic'd up even though he's in the corner. So he's talking to commentary whilst also cornering Maurice Smith. This is a recipe for disaster. Whoever came up with this idea is an idiot, because 2 seconds of thought would tell you this is a bad idea. I mean, fucking hell. And by the way, Tito Ortiz still hasn't been on commentary. Peretti, you're the matchmaker. Stop forcing yourself on camera. We've seen Tito Ortiz in the back already. Why is he not on commentary? People would much rather hear from him. But I digress. Hoffman sprints at Smith to start, clinches up against the fence, gets the takedown into guard, passes guard, into side control, back to half guard. Nothing is happening, of course. I believe Pat Miletich again is in the corner of Hoffman. And I swear to God, we are talking to mic'd up Frank Shamrock whilst he's in the corner of Mo Smith. So Smith is on bottom, and he can't hear from his coach or talk to his coach or get any sort of advice, because apparently it's more important commentary speak to Frank Shamrock in the corner than it is for Frank to help coach his teammate who's getting his ass beat. What a fucking mess. Hoffman gets to mount. Smith is able to escape the mount, stand back up on his feet, and he ends the round with Hoffman keeping him pressed against the fence. This round was 10-9 Hoffman. A lot of the strikes from the mount only really came with a minute left to go, and the rest of the round was pretty much jockeying for position. It wasn't a 10-8, even though Hoffman had complete control. Hoffman gets another takedown, and Shamrock isn't able to coach his fighter again because commentary feel the need to talk to Frank Shamrock in the corner. This is bullshit, by the way. Who could have predicted this would be a mess? The idea on the surface of it is terrible if you apply any sort of thought to it. Mic the corner, right? Mic the corner, do that so the camera can pick up calls. Don't have a full-on conversation with commentary whilst your fighter is looking for advice to stop getting his arse kicked. Jesus. Hoffman's shoelaces come undone. We need to stop the fight. After the restart, Hoffman gets Mo right back down, but Smith is able to get back to his feet immediately. He's pretty good at getting up. Hoffman still has him pressed against the fence, and we finally get a break, but Shamrock still mic'd up to the camera and to commentary, so it's coming through over the top of the commentary, his call-outs in the corner. This is audio poison between commentary, which is already bad enough, Shamrock yelling on top of that because he's mic'd up to everything. And it's not even Shamrock's fault. I'm sure this wasn't his idea, and I'm willing to bet that it wasn't his idea. But then between commentary, then Shamrock on top of that, and the audience on top of that, terrible. Maurice is finally able to establish some sort of control in the fight, getting to dominant position in the clinch, landing some body shots against Hoffman while Shamrock's screaming for knees. Hoffman is just chasing Smith. Now he's tired, so he tries to spit out his mouthpiece multiple times so that he can try and get a break. John Peretti says that Maurice Smith is the best martial artist of 98, 99 and 2000. No, I'm not kidding. He actually said this. All whilst, by the way, Maurice Smith was punching Hoffman in the thigh at the time. Hoffman gets another takedown, and into the mount he drops some ground and pound with not a whole lot of technique, just like clubbing blows. Maurice is able to get this to side control to end the round, and Miletich saying that Hoffman won the round, and you know, maybe, to be honest, I think it's close. Peretti says it's been a Smith round. He then hears Pat Miletich saying that Hoffman won the round, then Peretti immediately switches and says that Smith is no match for the forward pressure of Hoffman. Again, I'm not kidding, all of this happened, you can watch it. Oh man, this fight. So, Maurice Smith now has Hoffman pressed against the cage to start the third, and you can hear Shamrock scream, shin kick, and then Goldberg has to cut across trying to then converse with Shamrock whilst he's coaching fuck this fight. Hoffman spits his mouthpiece out again on purpose. Again, Big John isn't doing anything about it. He's already warned him in between the rounds to stop it, and he won't do it. He keeps doing it. Hoffman is completely fucked against the cage. He's out of gas. So Maurice Smith just starts to work the body against the fence. A lot of hard punches. John Peretti says that Smith needs a knockout. Again, I'll remind you, he said that round 2 was a Smith round. Smith spent the entire round teeing off on the body of Hoffman. He killed Hoffman from start to finish. No knockdown here. But in terms of scoring, Hoffman done nothing except hold on. He had no return for Smith, who just destroyed him with body shots. Do you need to drop someone for the round to be a 10-8? Smith killed him, destroyed him the entire round from second 1 to the 5th minute, putting damage on him with no return whatsoever. So we go to the scorecards, and to cap off this abomination, we go to the scorecards for a majority split decision, which isn't even possible. Nice way to cap off this production disaster. And look, nothing against the fighters here. The fight was just about adequate, right? Nothing good, nothing bad. It was made horrendous by the audio, and everything around the fight was just horrendous. The camera work, fine. It's mainly just the audio commentary so bad. And that on top of Shamrock in the corner, and he can't help it. What's he supposed to do? Oh no, I'm mic'd up to the TV. Am I just not supposed to coach my fighter now? No, he has to scream so that Smith can hear him, but he's screaming over the top of commentary, but just over the top of the crowd. The fight was, again, adequate, just fine. But from the audio to the majority split decision, which cannot exist, I suppose the camera work was okay. So I won't go all in on the production, but the judges and the commentators, and whoever decided it was going to be a good idea to mic up Ken Shamrock or Frank Shamrock, just no, not a good decision at all. But the majority, sorry about that, it's been a while since we've had one of them, but for the majority split decision, Mo Smith wins, and the crowd isn't really that happy. Nobody really seems to cheer, nobody really seems to boo, just sort of, oh. And then there seems to be some sort of scrapping in the aftermath, unhappy with the decision. Mo Smith with a win, close decision. It depends which way round 2 goes, to be honest. I could have seen this being a draw with like a 10-8 to Smith in the third, because he spent the entire 5 minutes beating the fuck out of Hoffman with no resistance whatsoever. I don't think you need to drop someone for it to be a 10-8 round. But round 2 could have gone either way. So I'm not mad at it at all. John Peretti is then asked about the main event with Dan Severn, and he shits all over tonight's main event. He says that Dan Severn has never shown much in the cage. He's the most decorated champion in UFC history to this point, just in case you were wondering. But he's never shown much in the cage. He says that he has no finishing holds in his entire body, even though he has a shitload of submissions on his record. And he makes Mike Goldberg, John Peretti that is, makes Mike Goldberg feel very awkward on commentary, and you can tell by the silence that follows. It's just like, oh, real, like, you really, like, we're trying to promote this thing, like, your job is the matchmaker, by the way, fucking idiot. He sounds so bitter. I have no reason, like, I have no idea why he would be bitter towards Dan Severn. But Peretti apparently didn't want Dan Severn back. According to him in an interview, he said that Bob Meyrowitz wanted Severn, and he wanted Severn to fight a kickboxer, so Peretti made this match. And apparently he's bitter about it. And he's putting it on camera, which is just wildly unprofessional, because see, to the fan at home who paid for this event, first of all, okay, you're already upset that Tito Ortiz isn't there. Now, Okay, but Dan Severn's returning. Holy shit, Dan Severn, the most decorated champion in UFC history. He's coming back. He's fighting Rizzo, who's just off the back of, okay, not so great a fight against Kevin Randleman, but he was just a heavyweight contender for the belt. And now they're sitting at home going, here's the matchmaker who won't get off television. He has to insert himself into every event whenever he can. Why is he shitting all over the main event? Which in the fans' mind is the fight that he put together, because he's the matchmaker. At no point does he divulge that this came direct from Bob Meyrowitz. Not once. So he just shits all over the main event, which apparently, again, to the audience watching at home, he put together, which technically he did. The audience is sitting there thinking, why did I spend my money for this apparent shit fight that even the matchmaker hates? Couldn't fucking believe this. John Peretti will be gone from Zuffa, or when Zuffa takes over, and I have nothing else to say about him. Thank God this era is coming to an end. So now Maurice Smith has an interview with James Wermey in the back, and he said that Hoffman had the first, second could be a draw, and the third was Smith's. Now, I've had this issue, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the video, but I've had this issue with Jeff Blatnick as well, where he calls rounds draws where there's been no point deductions. Why do people not understand the 10-point system where someone has to win? Somebody has to get 10 and someone has to get 9 or under. I don't understand what the confusion is, that without a point deduction, you can't draw a round. So I don't understand. But Maurice Smith kisses James Wermey on the way out. Okay. And we prepare for our main event, and thank God Shamrock's just back on commentary. You know what I mean? And we can stop with the corner mic, and I prefer Shamrock to Peretti. Shamrock does a better job promoting this fight than the matchmaker did. The fight that the matchmaker apparently puts together, Shamrock does a better job promoting it than himself. And Shamrock, does what any normal commentator would do and talk up both fighters. He pays respect to Dan Severn instead of trying to tear him down. And his impact on the sport, Shamrock makes, very apparent, very grand. He's one of the original guys and has impacted the sport, and what you see today isn't what it is without Dan Severn, right? He's not trying to shit on him because he's apparently better for some reason, So we get to the pre-fight promo package, and there isn't really any story to this fight. It's just sort of fighter A versus fighter B. We don't really have any connection between the two fighters. Again, the production, we don't tell the story of Severn's return and the evolution of the sport. Does he still have what it takes to win? They don't hit any of these points. They don't talk about how Rizzo represents a different style and he's already beaten the other pioneers like Tank Abbott or Mark Coleman. Coleman, the man who beat Dan Severn to become the first heavyweight champion. They don't put any story in here to try and sell this thing. It's just sort of a run through of Severn's career to present day, player 1 versus player 2 type fight. They don't even really mention his time away doing pro wrestling. None of it. They don't mention anything that would make you give a fuck about this fight. They don't do it. So we just get a sort of career, not even a retrospective, just like a run through what Rizzo's done, what Severn's done, and we start the fight. So Severn goes for a weak looking takedown, but then again, I couldn't tell how, forceful he went after it because of the weird top down view, the strange camera angle that we opted for to start the fight, which Rizzo just easily counters. How are you supposed to tell from this angle what the fuck's even happening? Jesus Christ. Both jab slightly out of range and both miss before Rizzo glances a head kick, which you would have thought also missed if it wasn't for the sound. Rizzo lands the first leg kick and drops Severn, and then Rizzo lands a second leg kick on Dan Severn, folds him to the mat, and the fight is over. Speculation as to whether this fight is fixed. I don't know. I can't tell. They never touched each other outside of the leg kicks. Severn attempted a weak takedown from what it looked like. Again, you can't tell. And look, there are signs that point to this being a fix. Then again, The leg kicks killed Tank Abbott as well, but your guess is as good as mine. And look, the modern fighter beats the Pioneer to end the Pioneer era. This fight was a fucking nothing burger. What do you want? It was 90 seconds, 2 leg kicks, and it was done. So that's it. Goldberg and Shamrock recap the card and bring UFC 27 and, as a result, the Pioneer era to a close. So overall thoughts on the card. I was about to say mixed bag, but it's far more bad than good. That Smith-Hoffman fight and post-fight, not even analysis, but just spiel from Peretti has actually pissed me off and put a proper sour taste on this whole card. I don't like Tito Ortiz being pulled from the event after being advertised at the previous event. He didn't even feature on commentary, but we need to put the matchmaker on commentary to talk about what, you know what I mean? So Tito Ortiz not even being on commentary like the statement said he would be. And look, being pulled from the event over a contract dispute that you just fold to in the end anyway, like, get the fight in the fucking cage and worry about all that other stuff later. At least that's the perspective of this fan right here. I enjoyed Frank Shamrock on commentary. I like when the current fighters are at the desk, they have insight into what the training of the time is like. Everybody's training with each other, so they understand what the strategy of the fighters are, what they're employing, the actual tactics. And they do it through actual first-hand experience, probably having trained with a lot of the guys that are either in the cage or the coaches in the corner, as opposed to just running over, fighter meeting notes from Goldberg or Blatnick. I don't even want to talk about John Peretti anymore. But in terms of the actual action in the cage, now that we've dealt with commentary and Tito Ortiz's situation, in terms of the actual action in the cage, Freeman and Williams is just not it at all for me. Just, again, gassed after a round, and then it's just coin flips. Fuck, man. Yuki Kondo versus Dantas was better. I actually enjoyed that fight. Genuinely, I actually enjoyed Yuki Kondo versus Dantas. I enjoyed it. There was some good groundwork in there. A nice finish on the feet to cap it off. Really good knee. Couple of knockdowns. That was good shit. I would rewatch that fight. If you're watching anything from this, go and watch Dantas versus Kondo. Iha versus Clark. Fine submission. In fact, throw Horn in here as well. Fine submission win for him too. Nothing to go back and watch. Just empty. Vapid has become the word. Maurice Smith versus Bobby Hoffman. Look, in terms of action in the cage, fine for what it was. Decent fight. Smith pulls it out the fire at the end. I still don't know how majority split works. If someone could explain it, does it not either need to be a majority or it has to be a split? Like, I don't have a problem with Smith winning. That's not the problem. The fight was close, and if you don't do enough to clearly make it yours, then these decisions can happen. Really weak move from the Hoffman team to start scrapping in the cage after the fight. They cut around that. Really just mentally weak, right? And you know how much the online criticism affects that team. Mentally soft stuff here. The decision doesn't go your way and all of a sudden you throw a tantrum about it like a maladjusted child. Grow up, And then we get to the main event. Really not a lot of good stuff on this card. Not a lot of good. I'm talking about one fight here. The fight between Smith and Hoffman was ruined by the production of everything else around it. Kondo versus Dantas was actually good. And Iha versus Clark, one-sided, over very quickly. So too was fucking Jeremy Horn's fight. I can't even remember who he was fighting now. See, I'm all worked up. But we get to the main event, and the main event happened, I suppose. Possible work, probable work, 90 seconds in and out, 2 leg kicks landed and a failed takedown. Whoops, I done all that I could. Hizzo was going to win this one no matter what, just on paper looking at it. So, I mean, I suppose we can just be thankful that it was over quickly. But nothing to this card. Like, that is genuinely it for UFC 27. And I say sadly, at this point, we're fucking waving goodbye. Cheerio, see you never, pioneer era of MMA in America. It ends with a whimper, not a bang, as the violins continue to play on the sinking SEG ship. The SS Meyrowitz is going down, and they need a hero. But luckily enough for them, the hero may already be in the family. So join me next time at UFC 28 for the return of the natural Randy Couture as he looks to reclaim the title he never lost against Kevin Randleman. That takes place at the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, New Jersey, as the UFC heads north for the first time in a long time. Like and subscribe, and I will see you all there.